maximum firepower.
Brace for impact!
Welcome to the Brace for Impact podcast, where we tell you how to be better at Star Wars Armada. Today, we're going to analyze our last battle report, discuss deployment and activation advantage, and do some speculation on cards that could benefit from upcoming points changes. So to get us started, we're going to cover the battle report that we just posted on YouTube, which is Red October versus the Fleet of Justice, which is match 5, and that was played on the Most Wanted objective. What did you think of this game?
Why would you say that? You know I hated this game. This game was fucking awful. I ran the same list I ran in our previous match. And this one was just like, I just used like all of its juice or something. It was like I was riding a car that had no more gas in it. It was like depleted. This was like a depleted list that I flew.
What do you mean when you say depleted?
I just couldn't fucking do anything. It's like I would get a juicy shot off on my onager. I'd roll dice. I'd get like 5 damage with no accuracies, and I'm like, all right, I'll just tap entering enters, reroll all of them, and then I get like 2 accuracies and 3 damage. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? And also like, during the game, because you saw in our previous match the like turn 1 shenanigans where I boost up with Ozzel, do the thing with Cataclysm, and lay down an ignition token and hit you on turn 1, and you did not let that fucking happen this time.
This game was played like chronologically after match 4, and so realizing that you wanted to put your ignition token in front of some of my ships. Number one, this list has a much better deployment than the previous list that I played, just because like having the squadrons, having the list, like not placing CR90s. You know, I'm placing 2 A-wings. I'm placing, a Millennium Falcon and an X-wing. Like, this is forcing kind of the game to go a little bit better in my direction, because I placed more ships later in the deployment phase than I did in the previous game.
Yeah, this was one where like you just had more deployment advantage than I did, and you also did something that really like it wasn't this game that you put the GR75 down later, because you don't have any GR75s in it, but you put your MC30 down first. And that kind of like took me back, because I was like, why aren't you putting your cheaper ships? Why are you putting the one you have like foresight on? But now I realize, after shooting like one onager shot at foresight, it has the it can affect an additional die with its evade.
Yeah.
So it can evade like 3 dice at long range or extreme range from the onager. So you put that down as your target. So even if I do get a hit, it's not doing any fucking damage.
Right, yeah, I mean, it was basically like a distraction for the rest of my fleet to be in a better position. I lay MC30 foresight down.
And then you had 3 deployments of squadrons, and then by then I had everything.
So then onager has to deploy across from foresight. And yeah, at extreme range, you're still, I think, red extreme range, so you're only rolling 4 dice, and I can cancel 3 of them with a single evade token. So I wasn't really concerned at all about the onager coming at foresight. Later, when foresight started attacking the assault frigate, I think there was no reason it should have lived.
Oh, you mean when the onager started attacking the assault frigate?
Yeah. Yeah. The assault frigate should have died probably on turn 4. And the fact that it didn't and survived the entire game, like, I don't think it dying on turn 4 would have swung the game in your favor, but it would have made the rest of the game more difficult for me. Not being able to throw blacks with Yavaris at the Raider, not being able to swap my reds for blues against the onager on the MC30. Like, a lot of that stuff becomes more difficult. And on top of that, like, by turn 4, you've lost multiple ships. I haven't lost any, and I just have this incredible activation advantage on top of it.
Yeah, the activations were like, I was at like a point like at around turn 3 when like none of your ships had died yet, where I was like, why am I not having like I had no good like decisions to do. Like any decision I had, it's like, oh yeah, but that puts you like at range 1 of the MC30. So do you really want to activate that right now before the MC30 is activated? And it's like, oh, well, if you don't activate your onager right now, you miss your ignition shot. So you can't, turn in with your raider and activate that first, because then you'll miss. Obviously, you'll move the assault frigate out of the way. It was just like every move I made, I was like, this is better than my other choice, but still shitty. It's still shitty.
Yeah. There were a couple of things that I'm sure rewatching the game, you'd be like, well, considering how it turned out, maybe I should have done X or Y or Z, but some of that is like Monday morning quarterback. Like,
yeah,
you couldn't have known that this dice roll would have been so bad that it actually wouldn't have killed its target. So, like, I think you shot 2 times into the broadside of the assault frigate with the onager,
and didn't kill it. It only
like
had
black
6 hull.
dice, and it didn't die. Yeah. It was. I was like really stressed. I think at one point I interrupted the video to show you that my watch had told me my heart rate was above 120 for like more than 10 minutes.
I remember that. Yeah, hilarious.
I was like, I can't believe it's still alive, and then I can't believe that it didn't fly off the board. Both of those turns, that it almost fell. It was It was the luckiest game that I've ever played in terms of rolling dice and things working out the way that they should. Part of that was just how hard
I would have liked
the
dice rolling to have like been spread out among your ships a little bit and not just get nuked by like what was it, 8 damage assault frigate.
I felt pretty good.
It was ridiculous.
I wish that it had happened more on my ships that I attached APT to, but I mean,
I don't really run against people that run APT a lot, and you don't run APT a lot, so I really don't see it. That does not feel good to go against. That I don't like playing against someone who has APT. That doesn't feel good. Have I been doing this to people all this time?
It feels horrible, dude.
It's the worst fucking
like,
thing.
That moment when you pulled the crit on your onager, which still had many shields left, and it took away your ability to shoot at obstructed targets, which, like, in that moment in the video, you're like, I think you just won the game, because that crit prevented you from shooting my hammerhead, prevented you from shooting my assault frigate. It prevented the 2 targets that were possibly able to be shot at by the onager to do any damage. It was just like, no, you can't shoot them anymore.
It's terrible. It was honestly the worst.
Which took a lot of the decision making away from you in terms of like, what are the good decisions I can make?
Yeah, because like my idea was like, okay, we'll just punch through the hammerhead. Like, that's not even an issue. I had most wanted on it, so I would roll another dice, and then just truck through the debris field. Like, it doesn't matter. Place the ignition, catch the assault frigate, and then we're in a good spot. I mean, not the best, but it's better than what fucking happened.
Right, yeah. That crit took the game from, like, who's going to win? I'm not really sure. It's really close. And once you pulled it, I was like, there's no way he wins this game now.
No,
it's over.
I was looking at it and I was like, now I can't do anything. Like it's gone. And then literally the next round, I think the onager dies.
Yeah.
It's
interesting because we analyzed, I believe, APT versus ACM, haven't we?
No, we haven't done Ordnance yet. We should probably do Ordnance
When we
next.
do it, remind me to talk about the X factor of APT, that it can just randomly pull a crit that wins you a game.
Dude, APT is the X factor card.
ACM's never going to pull a random crit that wins you the game. Like,
no. And people are always like, oh, you do 2 damage. But APT is so much better than doing 2 damage.
Yeah. Crits are really bad.
Especially if you have first
for the person
player.
pulling them.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to share about this game? Because, like,
I want the record to show that I've already changed the Red October list. so that shit like this never happens again.
What'd you do? Put Vader on it?
No. I put fucking H9s and changed it to a Star Destroyer.
Oh, so it's not a Red October list anymore. It's like a new list.
No, it's the same kind of shit. It's just adjusted shit so that I'll
How
always
could
be
it
able
be-
to get an
how-
H9.
How could it be the same shit? You said you changed it to a Star Destroyer. You
No,
mean
an Onager Star Destroyer, yeah.
Oh, I was like, what? Okay, so it's an Onager Star Destroyer.
Because
instead of a
there's
test bed.
Onager Test
with
Bed and an
H9s.
Onager Star Destroyer. Yeah, with H9s.
But where did all? And I guess you took points away somewhere else.
So yeah, I changed. I took away one of the Intel officers and replaced it with Vader officer, and then I changed Thrawn to Ramadi.
Interesting.
Yeah, and that's where I got all the points. So same ships except for the Onagers now, the Onager Star Destroyer. So I've got blues. If I don't get the accuracy, I H9 it. If I have too many accuracies, I can use Varnillion and swap them. So I think it'll work out a little bit better. Because this Onager was whiffing too hard.
Yeah, it was. Unlucky dice for you, lucky dice for me, I think, is a lot of that game too.
Yeah, but I mean, sometimes you get lucky with dice.
Sometimes your assault frigate rolls 8 damage into the side of a freaking Architans,
That was
and you delete it next turn. Sometimes, bro, that assault frigate did so much damage to that game. Like it was like pretending to be Demolisher, you know?
Yeah,
Like
the Sato stuff. Sato seems really cool. I like that commander.
he's super fun when he works, and like your list having no squadrons really let me play around with Sato a lot. It feels like a list with a really, really high skill cap. Like the whole time I was playing it, and even afterwards, I was like, okay, yeah, I tabled this Imperial list hard, but I feel like I could have flown it better. And I didn't feel like even though I lost with the previous list with the CR90s and the Mon Cala frigate, and I was like, yeah, I can definitely play that better, but I didn't feel like excited about trying to play it better, if that makes sense. Like I felt excited to like fly this list again and like, you know, trigger Sato more frequently, position my ships better and stuff like that. So Sato is super cool, and he's definitely.
I did a list in Ryan Kingston's, 'cause obviously I don't have any Rebel ships, but a Sato list that used Wedge Antilles officer. I think that's really cool to like counter if someone has like a small cluster of like rogues and other squadrons to try and tie up your stuff. You can cloak them, get them out of the way for next turn.
Wedge Antilles officer, huh? Before the end of the squadron phase, you may spend a squadron token to choose up to 3 friendly non-unique squadrons without strategic. They gain cloak. Right. Wedge Antilles counters a squadron ball designed to stop Sato, right?
And it also gives you some good repositioning on your ships or your squadrons. Because distance 1 is much further than all the other range bands.
Yeah, he's super cool. He's super cool. The only other thing I was thinking about potentially for this list in terms of changes was finding a way to get Kanan in there.
Oh, with the raid? Yikes.
He already has cloak. Right? And rogue. And he's got assault as well, right? And he's got his ability, which is while attacking a ship, you spend a die with a crit icon to give it a raid token. Rolls 2 blues against ships, double brace, double blue and a red against squadrons. Like, seems like a really cool. He's the same cost as Januars. He's not like outrageously expensive too. Seems really cool.
And he's got the best version of raid in the game, I think. Where because all other raid squadrons, they have to spend a hit to do raid. He can spend a crit, which is substantially better because crits do nothing against ships.
What's crazy is it's both, actually. He can spend a hit and he can spend a crit.
No?
Right, because he has the assault keyword as well.
Wait, is that how that works?
Yeah, because he has assault, which says while attacking a ship, you can spend a die with a hit. If you do, they gain a raid token of your choice. But his card text also says while attacking a ship, you may spend a die with a crit. If you do, the defender gains a raid token of your choice. So
oh shit, that's
you could
right.
roll two. Yeah, you could give 2 raid tokens in a single
wow,
shot.
that's fucking insane.
All you have to do is not get an accuracy, which I'm fantastic at not getting accuracies. So
Well, I mean, if you run Kanan with, if you have Tor and Far in your list, you basically get 2 raids each time.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't stack raid tokens, but I mean, shutting down the 2 best commands, I mean, that's pretty fucking good. That's really cool.
yeah,
Also with Rogue. Seems pretty busted.
right.
I don't know who you would swap out, though, for Kanan in your list.
Well, considering he has Rogue, it makes it pretty flexible, but it's something to think about for sure. Like, it could be
Maybe Shara?
Gold Squadron,
Gold Squadron, maybe.
because that's like... But Gold Squadron's a little bit cheaper, so I'd need to squeeze somewhere else,
You have
too.
Rogue Squadron in there,
It's something
right?
I'm going to... Yeah,
I would maybe do Rogue Squadron and
yeah.
maybe take out an upgrade somewhere that wasn't super useful.
I'm looking maybe at... Yeah, there's a lot of options, but we'll figure it out. We'll get a version 2 of Fleet of Justice here pretty soon. All right, you want to talk about deployment?
Yeah, let's talk about deployment then.
Yeah, so we got a request from Bill on YouTube. Bill asked a question. Basically, he said, the weakest part of my game is deployment and activation advantage, both in deployment and during the game. Do you think about deployment and activation advantage when making your list? Do you have any thoughts about deployment and activation advantage?
Well, firstly, to answer this question, yes.
Yeah, the short answer is
We do think about
it's one of the main things that I'm thinking
Yeah.
about, for sure. It's a great question, Bill. Thanks for asking.
It's deployment, activation advantage, and the objective cards. Those are the 3 things I'm thinking about. Because like any
Right.
other question, like, oh well, how do I do damage? How can my ships survive? Those come after. Like if you don't
Right.
have a good deployment, you're never doing damage. If you don't have activation advantage, your ships can't survive, and you won't do damage.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's true.
yeah.
You know, we thought a lot about this question, and we could almost make 2 or 3 analysis segments on
I mean,
this.
we'll probably talk about more of these topics. Like, I'm pretty sure we could just do one on like obstacles and setup and each one. But we're gonna try and do our best to kind of summarize what we can.
So, like, when I'm making a list, right, a lot of times it will come from the beginning will be, you know, maybe I want to fly a particular commander. So, like, when I made the Fleet of Justice, I was like, I want to make a Sato list. The next thing I look at is, are there any ship archetypes that I want to bring that I find interesting or fun? So I really wanted Foresight, and I really wanted Salvation. And the interaction between Salvation and Sato is essentially why I created the Fleet of Justice list, right? I wanted to throw black dice at long range out of a Nebulon that would give me like insane damage if I get hit crit on the black die, right? Didn't really happen for me that game.
Yeah, because Salvation's black dice, the hit crits
3.
do
Right.
3 damage.
So I was like, if I can concentrate in and roll 3 black and a red, like there's some really crazy numbers you can get in terms of damage at long range, right? The next thing I think about is, okay, how do I fill out my list? And what pieces do I need to make everything work? And what objectives complement that, right? So when I'm building, right, like there are, you want an even number of squadrons, number one, because each 2 pair of squadrons gives you another deployment. And it's a deployment that I think is far better than even having another ship. Because when you deploy 2 squadrons, it's almost like a pass on deployment.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal with deployment is I want to deploy as many of my ships as late as possible in the deployment phase. And the more important the ship is to my game, the later I want to deploy it.
Yeah.
Right? So, and to see this driven to its extreme, like if you look at superior positions or Solar Corona, the first player must deploy all of his ships and squadrons before the second player. Right? This is like an objective of the game. If you can deploy as many of your squad as your ships later and later and later, you are setting yourself up with an advantage for the rest of the game that is sometimes insurmountable for the other player.
Yeah, I would say like a lot of games that I've played, some people will ask me like, okay, like that was fun, like what can I do better next time, or like where did I go wrong here in the game, like why did I lose so bad? And I was like, you lost before turn 1. You lost in deployment. You can't always guarantee a win by deploying your ships correctly, but you can for sure lose the game if you deploy them poorly.
Yeah. For an example of how to lose the game in deployment, you can look at our match, I think Suicide Squad Strikes Back.
I don't think we called it Suicide Squad Strikes Back, and now I don't trust your titles anymore.
Or is it Yeah, I think it's Suicide Squad Strikes Back.
Suicide Squad Rides Again. Why isn't it Suicide Squad Strikes Back?
I wanted to actually avoid the Empire Strikes Back parallel there. I wanted to be a little bit more unique, but maybe I was wrong.
This is a Star Wars game.
Anyway, I lost that game in deployment. And whatever else happened after deployment, no matter how well I played, if you had handed me like the board state at turn 1, and if I had flown against Suicide Squad 5 times, I don't think I could have come up with a win.
All right, I'm looking at the start of the game. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I see what you're talking about. Yeah. If you want to see like deployment that's almost insurmountable, Match 3 Suicide Squad Rides Again is a perfect picture.
Yep. So if we just go to the end of setup, right, we're looking at like turn 1, beginning of turn 1, right, like 4 minutes 40 seconds into the game, right? Okay, so on Chandler's side of the board, on the Imperial side of the board, you have Demo, 2 Architans, 2 Raiders, all squatted up in the bottom left corner of the screen. In the top of the screen, you have my ridiculously bad deployment, which is an assault frigate pointed left to right, 2 MC-30s 100 miles away in the middle of the board, and a GR-75 in the middle, kind of like a moron, with 4 YT-2400s. Now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I had a deployment advantage in this game. I actually had +1 deployment, and the Empire was first player. So I actually placed both MC-30s last here, right? And I still lost deployment because I just had the wrong idea in my head of how this fight was going to go down and how much time I had to get the kill. Even deploying those MC-30s at speed 4, which I didn't, but even if I had, they were never close enough to the battle to have a significant impact before the game was decided. If I had placed them in between the GR-75 and the MC, or and the assault frigate, it's a completely different game.
I think it's a game that I lose. Like if you put those 2 MC-30s like between the assault frigate and the GR-75, or I would have, like, you know, with hindsight, I would have put them on the left side of the assault frigate, like right up against your deployment.
Right, the assault frigate a little bit more toward the center of the board, with the MC-30s kind of between it and the enemy, would have been the change I would make, you know, playing this exact same matchup again and having perfect knowledge. Like, the token would actually be kind of, because I believe I placed the token as well. The token kind of goes directly below or to the right of the space station, with the assault frigate kind of in the same scenario to it. And then the MC-30s are where the assault frigate is. They kind of screen the enemy away. The assault frigate gets away. It doesn't die like it does in this game. Spoiler alert if you haven't watched it. Everything on my side of the board effectively dies in rapid succession, starting with the assault frigate carrying the VIP. If it had been placed better, that game becomes totally different. So, you know, if you want to see me squander deployment advantage, check out Suicide Squad Rides Again. Another example of poor deployment, I think, was Match 4, Red October versus Alliance Home Fleet. And now this was less of a mistake on my part and more of one player came into this game with a vision in their head of how they wanted the game to go. Wow. Honestly, though, the video quality between match 3 and match 4
It's
is
really
crazy.
striking. I was like, oh my god, this looks so good.
I've never done them back to back like that before. The Imperial player, again, a tight formation of their ships. I have learned since match 3, tight formation of my ships, and you see as deployment goes, I believe your onager goes down pretty late in deployment here. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You have first player, so I should have done better at deploying, but I didn't. So you have a vision in your head. You said, when I drop this onager, it's going to be directly across the board from as many CR90s as I can possibly put it. I'm going to move forward right away. I'm going to drop a token, my ignition token, as close to them as I can, and I'm going to nuke the ever-living crap out of one of these CR90s before it can run away. Because you have first player, right? So you get all of these stacked advantages all in one, right? This is the benefit of having a plan, right, with your list. This is what it's going to do. This is, even if it's not the most meta list, if you have in your head, like, this is what I want my list to do on turn 1, 2, 3, you're going to beat the snot out of a player flying a meta list who doesn't really know what they want it to do.
Or where to put their ships on the map.
Yeah, in this case, the correct answer was actually more for me to spread out the CR90s, or this is tougher. This is not as clear-cut, like I made the wrong move, because my list was designed to keep the CR90s near home 1 for the accuracy advantage of home 1 flipping their die to accuracy all the time, combined with TRC for getting basically 3 hits in an accuracy, 3 hits in an accuracy, 3 hits in an accuracy. That was the vision for the list. It was just countered by the splash damage version of the onager list.
Yeah.
So, unfortunate. I didn't do this super well. Now, match 5 is me winning deployment. And you can see, let's see, beginning of round 1, about 4 minutes and 40 seconds, I was able to place 1, 2, 3 sets of squadrons, an even number, boom. Right after foresight goes down, basically the difference here is you place a ship, I place foresight, you place a ship, I place 2 squadrons, you place a ship, I place 2 squadrons, you place a ship, I place 2 squadrons, then you're placing the onager, right? And I get 1, 2, 3 bonus ships to place.
This felt rough. This felt really bad.
Because I kept basically everything away from the onager.
And the important part for this whole thing is my onager is the centerpiece of the list. It's got the Oslo shenanigans and everything. And if you look at the deployment, if I move the onager and I pick it up and I put it on the left, where your ships are, your assault frigate, your hammerhead, and your nebulon now aren't there anymore. They're somewhere else in a better position, and I'm still out of position.
Right. And I forced this to happen through deployment advantage.
Now, talking about your squadrons and using them to your advantage, how important is it that it's an even amount of squadrons?
Well, it's not the end of the world. If you have a really strong list that you like and it has 7 squadrons, right? Okay. But that 7th squadron isn't helping you in turn 0. He can't come out until all of the ships are placed. So he's not forcing a ship onto the board earlier.
I would go a little harder on that, and I would say if you have a 7th
you would say
squadron,
it's awful?
Yeah, I would say if you have a 7th squadron, it's if that's a TIE fighter, 9 points, you should take one of your more expensive ships and split it into another ship, add another ship in there so you have an even 8. I would say it's that important.
Yeah, and this is a fleet. The Fleet of Justice is a 7 deployment fleet, right? Whereas you have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 deployment fleet. Coupled with first player meant I had 3 ships to place at the end for free.
How many ships would you say is average for coming into deployment with?
How many ships or how many deployments?
How many deployments? I would say 4 to 6 is average.
I think if you want to come into a game feeling confident that whatever list you go up against, you're going to have a deployment advantage, you want 7 or 8 deployments. Because I agree with you that typically people are bringing 5 or 6. 4 is kind of spooky low. The only time you see 4 is for a list that has a big honkin' heavy boy.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Because like my conspiracy ISD's a double ISD list. It has 4 deployments, and that feels.
And
low.
that's about as low. That's about as low as you can go. Does it have strategic advisor?
No, that doesn't really help.
Because
I need the activation advantage. Yeah.
It doesn't help you in deployment, but getting into activation, we'll get into that in a minute. But you have to make up for it somewhere.
Yeah. I'm so low on activation that I have to make up in some way to have another activation in there.
Imagine how unhelpful strategic advisor would be on my list, right? Like, I have plenty of deployments, plenty of activations. I don't need to buffer this anymore.
I would say if you're lower than 4, you're doing something wrong.
If you're lower than 4, like if you're doing a 3 ship list, because that's basically the only way to get lower than 4.
Like what do you? I don't know.
Consider a 4 ship
consider
list.
Something else.
Consider 2 squadrons. Like it would only be for like SSDs, disgustingly over budgeted Starhawks, or like a crazy ISD list, like a single, like I can't even imagine one that would be competitive enough to make up for the fact that you're losing the deployment.
If you have just 3 deployments, your list is probably bad somewhere. Even if you're running an SSD. If you're running an SSD and you don't have more than 3 deployments, and you like go in, you have like 1 SSD, and you're like, this is my Christmas tree, it's going to go in there and smash face, you're probably going to lose the game.
Try thinning the number of upgrades on your ships. The reason I was able to get the 6 squadrons in was because I had to tear my own heart out and take Spinal off of Salvation. I think I took Spinal off in Intel Officer, which was originally on Salvation, and I just ran Salvation just title to get to 6 squadrons. It was that critical to me to have enough squadrons to fend off enemy squadrons. If the Imperial player had brought a Sloan list, and I only brought 4 squadrons, guess what? Sato, waste of points. He becomes effectively useless. So I had to bring enough squadrons to not necessarily win every squadron battle, because I don't think that these squadrons would do that, but to exist long enough for Sato to do his thing. That's about all I've got to say at the moment about standard deployment. 7 to 8 deployments, I think, is really strong. If four of those are ships, 4 or more, that's really strong. And definitely think about it from the list creation process, adjusting your list to get to those 8 deployments, 7, 8, 9. I think is sometimes pushing it, but that's like MSU list territory, or bomber wing, like 134 points of squadrons territory. Which is reasonable, but it's a unique scenario. Like I think every list really wants 7 or 8 deployments.
Yeah.
But there are some objectives which really twist deployment and make a list possible that might not be otherwise. And then there are some that have drawbacks. Speaking to drawbacks specifically, when Fighter Ambush came out, I was originally like, this is so freaking thematic. It seems so cool. I want to make a fighter, like a squadron list, and attach this objective to it. Fighter Ambush saying, before deploying fleets, the second player sets aside all his squadrons. After deploying fleets, the second player deploys all his squadrons. Each squadron can be placed as normal or at distance 1 of an obstacle, but all must be beyond distance 5 of the first player's edge. And then there's a special rule when a squadron attacks a ship. If the ship was dealt a damage card, then you get a 15-point victory token.
Sounds like the dream.
Seems cool.
That is so thematic. It's so good.
Wow. Give me a bunch of squadrons and let them start just like harassing the enemy ships on like turn 1. Like you could think of like, I want a list with like boosted comms and a couple of GR-75s with bomber command center, and like I want to start just like attacking his ships on turn 1, turn 2, like really like dealing the damage. I don't like this card for heavy squadron.
I think it's bad for having squadron lists.
Because like it takes your, one of my favorite things about flying a bunch of squadrons is chuckling on my side of the board as the enemy has to drop 100-point ship and I drop 2 12-point squadrons and then say, your turn. It says, if this had said instead after deploying fleets, this card would be incredible.
Yeah.
If it was set up after deploying fleets, that means you do the whole deployment thing. You have all your squadrons boosting up your deployments. Then you take them off the board and redeploy them in the middle. Wow. That card is suddenly incredible objective. But because a 134-point fleet is typically not going to be an MSD list, it's typically not going to have 7 ships also. It's going to have 3. It's going to have 4. Now you're a 3 or 4 deployment fleet going up against a normally 4 to 6 deployment fleet, losing deployment, getting a poor position compared to your enemy. And then you're deploying your squadrons in the middle of the board, too far away to command from your ships. Or they're still close enough to command from your ships, and like you can normally play squadrons at distance 2 from your ship, but a ship can only command a squadron without boosted comms at distance 3 effectively, right? Close medium range. So this whole objective is literally just deploy your squadrons 1 distance further than normal, or deploy them so far away from your ships that they can't do anything. It's like,
yeah.
It seems so bad to me. It seems so bad to me. And the special rule of squadrons giving you victory tokens doesn't make up for the deployment loss.
No.
It just doesn't. So avoid that. Deployment's too important.
It's bad at big squadron balls. I think it's good for a small amount of rogues, or just like all rogues. But you still get fucked on deployment, and I think I would choose a different objective if I had a squadron like that.
If you have a bunch of rogues, and by a bunch I mean like 4 or 6, nothing.
Yeah, like
more.
not 134 points.
Less than 100 points for sure. More like 80. Like 4 YT 2400s, right? Like then this becomes interesting because you still have enough points to run enough deployments to be okay. I still think a list like that has better objectives it can fly for yellow.
Yeah, I agree. Like once you're running a list like that, you have better objectives.
Yeah. Another one that gives you negative deployment is fleet ambush. Well, not really.
Give you negative. It's like a negative effect to your deployment. I don't really think this like gives you kind of an advantage because I've.
It's just because you can't deploy squadrons.
Yeah, that sucks.
Right. No squadrons, and then like I was actually thinking about this and I was kind of afraid you would pick it.
I feel like this is a second player trap card. I don't feel like this is good for second player.
I would have taken away my squadrons. So now it's only 4 deployments. So I can't out deploy you with 75% of my fleet. And then every odd numbered deployment you can stick at basically red range of my fleet.
I mean, closer than that.
Scary.
The ambush zone is really close, dude. Like,
it's like almost blue range. If you really push it up against it, right? Like, you can be very close.
You can be right in their shit at black range at the start of round 2. And the problem with that, with this whole card, is that you're second player and I'm first player. So now I'm in your entire fleet, and I just get to eat you up.
Right.
And then what can you do? And the other problem is like we got to talk about objectives soon because I need to talk about what objectives are good to take and which ones are traps like this because this is a total trap card for people who are second player. Like you have to have a very concrete plan for fleet ambush if you're taking it. And you want a second player.
If you're taking fleet ambush, you need a ship that can beat the hell out of any ship that they put in the ambush zone.
Yeah. You need a real brawler ship.
Like you're not afraid of a Avenger getting dropped in the ambush zone. If you're not afraid of Avenger getting dropped in the ambush zone, take Fleet Ambush. If you are afraid of that, burn this card.
Yeah, just don't even have it. Like it's real.
Yeah.
That's really the danger. If you can look at this card and say, okay, on turn 2, Avenger boarding troopers is at black range of my best ship, and you're not worried about that, take Fleet Ambush and you're good to go.
It's hilarious because it would almost be a better card. I mean, and by almost I mean like there's a 90% chance this is a better card if it was almost reversed, where it said the second player must deploy ships within the ambush zone on his odd number deployment turns, because
that's an advantage. Yes.
That's an advantage for second player. If he builds his list to take advantage of it, he can say, well, now if you take this, my Avenger is eating your lunch turn 2, right? My Starhawk is mixing it up with your entire fleet turn 1, right? Like, people are afraid to take that card.
This one, I see it, and it's like an out for first player. Like, if I have a really good brawling
The ambush zone is so big that it just, like, no. Don't take this card, please. Next one is Hyperspace Assault. I love this card. I'm going to start putting it in more of my fleets. However, it does have negative deployment. Before deploying fleets, the second player, aka you, set aside a small or medium ship and up to 3 squadrons. Pick 2. He does not deploy them during setup. He places 3 objective tokens, and then you can kind of deploy it at the start of any round after the first round at one of those token locations. And the first player gets to move the tokens, or the second player can move the tokens distance 1 every turn. So you can kind of try to keep them relevant. But you lose up to 2 deployments, you lose doing this objective card. However, I actually think this is one of the negative deployment cards that, with the right idea in your head of what you're going to do, this card can make up for it. What do you think?
I mean, I like this card. It's a cool one, but like, you have to remember your second player. Like, if you have a black die ship, you need to have it deploy in a way where you're like, you hyperspace it in, it will still get its shot. You can't put it up against the ship, like right at the back, really close, and think you're still going to hit it, because it's not going to be there when it's your turn to activate. But it's a good objective. Right. I don't think it's like the best to take as far as defensive objectives go, but like, it's all right. You have to be running. It's kind of restrictive. You have to be running 1 small or medium ship, and like, you can also do it for squadrons, but I don't like that because it's taking away from your deployment advantage. Like, if you do a small ship and 3 squadrons, you're really fucking yourself.
I'm going to push back on that a little bit. Number 1, if you take Hyperspace Assault, you should also bring Bale.
What does Bale do again?
You should plan on... Bale's the one that lets you pick a turn to activate that ship first.
Okay. Now, the problem with what you said is that's not how Bale works.
What do you mean? After deploying feats, you may place 1 round token on this card at the start of the ship phase. If you are the second player, you must activate. If you are the first player, you may gain up to 2 command tokens of your choice.
Yep, you cannot resolve this card's effect if that ship is set aside. So that doesn't work.
Are you serious? Damn. Okay, well that's trash. Also, it's also trash because Bale says medium or large only, and Hyperspace Assault says small or medium only.
Only the assault frigate.
The only thing a rebel could do is bring an assault frigate, which is not the card you want to Hyperspace Assault. You want to Hyperspace Assault, and I know we're not analyzing these objective cards right now, but you want to bring an MC-30, you want to bring a Liberty.
I actually think you want to bring a Corvette A, or like, I think you want to bring a red dice ship.
Hammerhead.
Yeah.
You want to bring a Hammerhead with Geralt's Honor and start just smashing shit.
That's
from
actually
behind.
a good idea. Hammerhead with Geralt's Honor, like, and you just put it like right in front of them, and you're like, all right, hit me. I want you to hit me.
There's a couple more deployment ones. We're gonna talk about.
Wait, no. Did we talk about surprise attack yet? Was I not there for that?
No, we're gonna get to that.
We're getting to. I'll put it first because I want to talk about it first.
Okay. Surprise attack. Second player places the station at 1 to 5 of the first player's edge. While deploying fleets, the first player must deploy their flagship before deploying any other ships. The flagship must overlap the station, and it must be at a speed no greater than half of the maximum rounded up. So if it's a speed 3 ship 2, if it's a speed 4 ship 2, if it's a speed 2 ship 1, After deploying fleets, the second player places 3 face-down command dials in a stack on this card. And the first player is receiving raid tokens based on the command dials that you place at the start of the first 3 turns, which actually seems like the best part of this card, because that's a lot of freaking raid tokens.
No. See, I really, really like this card. I think this is a sneaky way of giving your list a really incredible deployment advantage. Like, we've been talking a lot about negative advantage for deployment. This is a really good way of giving yourself positive advantage for deployment.
Yeah.
Because it's their flagship. They have to deploy it first.
Because, their commander's on that ship. And then, so now every single thing that you drop on the board, you know where the flagship is.
Incredible. And the raid I think is like a bonus because it's like a mystery raid. You do it at the start of the ship phase, so they can't really, like, if they don't have the right token, they can't do anything. I think it's a really good card.
Like, do you just stack 3 nav tokens on this shit?
That's what I would do.
And because then their flagship, let's say it's an ISD, it's starting at 2 maximum, and it can't speed up for 3.
That's devastating.
Yeah. It can't get the extra yaw, it can't slow down, it can't speed up. It's just going to, and kind of awkwardly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking about this against an ISD flagship.
Like, whatever list you're running, you can match those raid tokens to. Like, if I was running this Sato, it could have been no concentrates, because you were doing that a lot to me, and it was triggering.
But if I was flying, if you're fighting a Sloan list, right, like suddenly that's 3 squadron commands, and like now their entire fleet, I think it's each of the ships gains a raid token, their entire fleet can't squadron command for 3 turns.
It's devastating.
Holy shit. That's a dead Sloan list, right? Like, how does it recover?
Like, because on Sloan you want to hit on turn 2 at least with those interceptors.
Yeah, at some point we need to talk about objectives more, but in terms of activation advantage, this is great positive activation advantage. Especially consider it's not just like a ship, right? It's
the flagship.
Their boy, the one that if you kill, like all of their ships get weaker.
Like if they have an ISD, some small ships, and a couple Gazantes, let's say they have 6 deployments, and the ISD goes down first, man, that's such a huge advantage. Knowing where the ISD.
Yeah, to be fair, they'll never pick it.
But that's also good because then you have other stuff that they'll pick. Now let's talk about the
so
big
there's
boys.
two cards that give god tier deployment advantage, and I think that these are by far the 2 best objectives for second player.
Period.
Superior Positions and Solar Corona basically both say the first player must deploy all ships and squadrons before the second player. That sentence alone can win you a game. Forget all of the other rules that come along with these cards. Putting that as an option
is unbelievable.
Can be terrifying to come up against. It's so strong. There are good players who know how to deploy against this, but there are players who will collapse under the weight of not knowing where your stuff is going to be.
Yeah.
We should talk about, by the way, how to deploy against this in a second. Superior Positions also is like special rule. If your squadron or ship attacks the rear hull zone and it suffers a damage, you get a victory token. That's not even just card damage, that's shield damage as well. So Superior Positions is crazy. Deploy as much as you can behind them. And then Solar Corona, you also choose a board edge to be basically a shining light that if any attack is coming toward that direction, you lose an accuracy. So whichever side you pick, let's say that the enemy deploys on the left-hand side of the board, you deploy on the right-hand side of the board and put the Corona on the right-hand side of the board. That way, as they're trying to shoot you, they're losing accuracies and you're not, right?
Yeah.
Now, anytime that you're at a deployment disadvantage, and I'll say especially in the case of Superior Positions and Solar Corona, there is the way to deal with it, right? There is a go-to if you don't know how to deploy because their list is doing something nuts, or your objective that you picked or they picked is spooky for you, right? You're first player and you picked Superior Positions because you had too many drinks.
Well, and also, like, a lot of deploying is ship knowledge and game knowledge and having time in playing dozens of games. If you're new,
Sure.
and you don't really know where to place your ships. Like, all right, when do I put my Corvette like really far on the right so it can hook in? How do you deploy when you're running up against ships you've never played against?
You deploy. I'm going to tell you.
I mean, like, I know you
board.
know. You deploy in the middle of the board. Yeah.
You deploy in the middle of the board with all of your ships close together, but not so close that they bump. And one way to tell is if you take the size bases of ships that you're using, so like medium or small, right, like whatever, small base ship, and you do like a one maneuver with the like one click in the maneuver tool, and you see how far out its ass sticks. Make sure that that doesn't hit the next ship over. Like that's kind of about how far apart they should be, and basically no farther apart than that.
Yeah, it's kind of more difficult to tell with like larger ships, but a good rule of thumb is your ship should be no more than distance 3 away from another ship. That's kind of how close together they should be. If they're any further, then it's too far.
Right. And what that does, especially deploying in the middle, you know, you can get a solar corona against you, you can get a superior positions against you, but by deploying in the middle, what you do is you force your opponent into an awkward decision, which a lot of this game is about forcing hard decisions for your enemy. If they solar corona,
I would say that doesn't work for
you deploy
solar
in the
corona.
middle. Well, it's gonna work for it can't work any worse.
That
right?
is true.
Like, this is the best possible spot for you to deploy in. Let's say it's superior positions. They want to shoot your butt. You deploy in the middle, all your ships pointed forward. How do they get to your butt? They have to either pick a side or joust you, come straight across, or try to like come around both sides, which is actually the trap and how that's how they lose the game. But none of those give you a disadvantage, right? Your fleets, you basically have canceled out superior positions for the first 3 or 4 rounds, you know, until they start shooting at your butt, maybe as your ships cross each other. But it lets your ships play on even footing when they were not designed to with this objective.
Yeah. Like, yeah.
And I think for a lot of these, like, what you'll see is, you know, especially you do this really well, is when you deploy your ships together, right? What you want to do is have all of your ships attacking the same target on the same turn so it dies. Brace tokens are really only good if your ship is getting shot at 1 to 3 times a turn. If your ship is getting shot at 4 or more times on a single turn, your brace tokens suddenly are disappearing. They're going away. You're losing them.
Yeah, because you can normally take like one full hit. You know, you'll be like, all right, I won't use my brace for this. But if you're taking 2 more after that, the brace is going to disappear.
Yep.
I would just say never pick Solar Corona. Just never pick Solar Corona. It's never good.
You mean never pick it as in never pick it as first player?
If you're first
when it's
player,
one of the cards in the pool?
Never pick Solar Corona. Because here's what happens. You lose all your deployment advantage, no matter how many ships you have, few or many. You place all your ships in the middle like we were talking about. Then they put their ships on one side, choose the Corona on the side they're on. They come at you, they turn in. Now you can't use really accuracies at all. You have to discard an accuracy icon, which is awful. And the best outcome for Solar Corona for first player is like a 6-5. You can't smash because you can't turn off their braces. That's the best possible scenario. And just don't go into games planning for a tie. So it's always better to pick a worse feeling objective, like Contested Outpost, or like I would even pick Opening Salvo over Solar Corona, because at least there's some variance there. But Solar Corona is just, it's too devastating to first player, and even if first player does really well, the best they get is like a 6-5. You can't smash with this.
Yeah, and I think to recap deployment, try to have 4+ ships, 7 or 8 deployments, 4 to 6 activations. I would say high on the higher end of that. Do you want to talk a little bit about activation advantage, or do you want to save that for another day?
I think we might have to save that for another day. Like, goddamn, I didn't realize it would take, because we have every portion of setup, obstacles, even how, like, talking about setting speed dials. We haven't got to any of that shit. So you're right.
Yeah.
I think we have to split this up.
Yeah. Thanks for your great question, Bill. We're going to talk about activation next week.
Yeah, we had a lot more to talk about.
But good luck at deploying your fleet in your next battle, and let us know how it goes.
When in doubt, deploy center field.
Yep. Speed 2 to victory.
All right. Next segment.
So in our next segment, we're going to talk a little bit about the future of Armada. We have Clone Wars coming out. I know we've talked a lot about all the different Clone Wars content that they've spoiled so far. And today we wanted to speculate a little bit about the card changes that are coming along with Clone Wars. One of the things that they mentioned was changing the point cost of cards to make them more relevant in the game, especially for some of the stuff that was released really early, was maybe overpriced. And one of the examples that they gave was the Leia commander being reduced from 38 points to 28 points. So we wanted to talk a little bit about, looking at all the commanders that are in the game right now, are there any others that, might get this blessing from FFG of some sort of change in their point value? Which commanders are overcosted, and how much should they cost to be relevant for their ability? Do you have any that stand out to you?
I mean, other than Leia, because that was one of the most obscene pricings. She was dead before she hit the ground.
They priced her the same as Admiral Akbar.
And it's honestly you just read the card and then you're like, okay, but for 38 points you just take Akbar and it's always better.
Tied for the most expensive commanders in the game, there are 3 commanders at 38 points, and only one of them deserves it.
Yeah. Honestly, it's pretty damning. And also I feel because based on the in-flight report that FFG gave, the way they were talking about these cards changes is that a lot of cards, I think they said 18% of them are getting point reductions or point changes. And they said that a lot of them are getting reduced points and a couple might be going up. And certain errata will obviously be updated. But obviously things like XI7, that's not its errata right now, or FAQ. That's a completely different alteration of the card. So I think there might be some other changes to commanders to make them a little fit a little better in Armada 1.5 where they're going. And I think there are a couple commanders that really stand out. And I'm looking at you, General Riken. I think you're changing in the future.
They've changed him so many times.
I know, and that's why I think they're changing him again. They've changed him so much. He's the Frankenstein's monster of the Rebel commanders.
Yeah.
I just feel like his ability, no matter how much you nerf it, is too good. It's just you just don't destroy a ship for the whole round.
And it still gets to activate.
Unbelievable. It's just something that should be changed.
It gets to be a zombie ship that blocks all of your stuff. Can't be removed from play.
Every round.
5 times basically, because nothing's dying turn 1, right? Not to rag on Riken, because everyone's well aware of the fact that they're probably the most busted commander in the game, probably the most busted card ever printed in this game in its original state, because it wasn't once per round at the start of it. It was not once per round, dude. It was nothing dies until 1 turn later. Which was right. It was disgusting. But Riken's won multiple world championships, right? It's a great card. It's just not a card that I'm super interested in playing anymore. I've played my fair share of Riken. Yeah, he keeps stuff alive. It's insanely strong. It just, for me, doesn't give a flavor to a list like a Sato does or an Akbar does that makes me super excited to fly him. It's just this is the Admiral you put on your list when you want to win a game, I guess. So
yeah,
if we're looking at ships or commanders whose point cost would change, right? I mean, Garm is like he's 25 points, but do people seriously play it?
I've seen a bunch of Garm lists.
At the start of the first
like
and fifth round, each friendly ship may gain a number of command tokens equal to its command value. Like, get a bunch of command tokens. Okay, this is also one of those cards though that like maybe just Armada's changes going into the future will emphasize command tokens in a way that having an additional, 3,
no,
or
stop,
4.
Stop, just stop.
What?
Because it's at the start of the first round.
That's nice.
Okay, and then there's the second round. So now I've already got 2 command tokens on my ship. Okay, why is Garm there?
All right.
Okay, he's going to give me 1 additional command token. What is that going to be? Engineering? Squadron? I don't have squadrons.
Garm wants to be on ships that have 4 command value.
Like a Starhawk? That's the only one that has 4 command for rebels. Are you going to put Garm?
No. No. All the MC-80s have
Do
4
they really?
command, Boomer.
I thought they had 3.
Yeah.
Why do they have so much command?
I think even the assault frigate has 4 command. Or no, 3 command. That one does have 3
No,
command.
they all have 3 command.
Oh. Command
Yeah,
value.
what were you thinking?
Wow. 3. They all have 3.
Yes. What were
You're
you
right.
thinking, though?
I was thinking of some engineering.
Engineering value. I was like,
I was
what?
thinking of engineering. I was like, yeah, they all have 4. It's like so stupid. Anyway, I think he's overcosted.
No. I think
For 25 points.
I don't think he's overcosted. I think his text is going to change, if at all, or they just want to put this guy in the ground. Because if we take a look at like in the Empire, General Tag, he's got the same cost and does a similar ability. At the start of the 3rd round and the 5th round, each friendly ship can recover 1 of its discarded defense tokens. I'm not trying to say how wildly better that is than Garm, but I think changing...
It's wildly better.
It is wild. That's not what I'm saying. If just changing when he activates would make him better.
Do you think like the 3rd and 5th round, he would suddenly be a better card?
Yes, intensely.
Yeah, I agree. Because the 3rd round is like when you want your ship to be at its peak strength, right?
Because it makes him more flexible. Like if you're going into the 3rd round and you're like, I've already taken some damage, I need an engineering token to get a shield back.
Right.
Or if you're out of position, now you need a nav to go down or up. He's better.
Right. I agree.
Obviously, you'll already have those tokens from the 1st round, but
Right.
you could have spent the tokens you would have gotten just by going forward round 1, and banking a token, and then round 2 banking a token. So it's you could have used those tokens for commands for something else, and then go into turn 3, and then get flooded with tokens, concentrate fire, squadron, engineering. Now, at the start of turn 3, you can activate a squadron if you need one, if one is close. It's just terrible that it's the 1st round. It's really terrible. And 5th round is kind of awkward because like that's when a lot of shit is died and like spread out, but what can you say?
3rd and 4th, or 2nd and 4th, or and then 3rd and 5th. Those are like, I would say that in terms of tiers, like 3-4 is best, then 2-4, then 3-5.
Yeah,
if they wanted to change when it happened.
If they just changed it to at the start of the 3rd round, he's like immediately better and like just an intensely flexible commander.
Yeah.
That I think would be really cool to run on like some big ships.
Speaking of command token commanders, Moff Tarkin, 38 points for 1 command token per ship every round. This is also intensely overcosted.
This is the worst example of a card that is printed too early.
Yeah.
He was like the core set commander, right?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
And he wasn't even good then.
Right.
It's just everyone just took Vader.
It's just not enough of a power spike
It
to
does
get
not.
one
This
command
card
token per
says
turn.
spend 38 points, do nothing. There you go. Do nothing. Gains a
Yeah.
command token. What is it? 1?
Like, how is
That's
this
the
compared?
whole
Like,
commander ability for almost 40 points.
right. That's like a fucking architect.
That's like a fucking Architans. That is for sure almost a Raider.
Yeah, it's like 1 point shy of a Raider, right?
Yeah.
Compared to
like,
Screed, which came out really early in the game as well, Screed immediately became the only commander that Imperials wanted to fly because they just got 12 extra points in their list that they could never have before. And it just says you can change a die to a face with a crit icon. Like that's just a benefit, and they get 12 extra points in their list compared to Tarkin. It's like
Tarkin,
he needs
I
something.
feel needs the works. He needs to be reduced, and
He needs to be a new card.
ability. He needs to be a new card. Yeah.
He needs to be a new card. Those and it's sad because those two commanders were like very early in the game, and just the game is not the same pace that it was before.
Mm-hmm.
And in the case of these guys, like
there's just more space for abilities. Like it doesn't just have to be get a command token. You know, it's
right. Exactly. Who else do you think deserves to be recosted here?
Admiral Constantine. He needs to be 0 points, and he needs to be in a different game.
At the start of each status phase, for each enemy ship at distance 1 to 5 of at least, oh my god, there's just too many conditions, right? For each enemy ship within distance 5 of at least 2 friendly, medium, or large ships, not smalls, fuck small ships, you may increase or decrease. You may increase or decrease that ship's speed by 1 to a minimum speed of 1. Okay, so the problem with this is it's incredibly constricting to your fleet building. Like, you have to have... Like, you don't want to have any small ships with this list, because a small ship doesn't trigger
ships.
Constantine.
So you don't get any deployment or activation advantage.
All right, you want to have like an interdictor and an ISD, right? That's like the wet dream of the person who like designed this card. It's like interdictor, ISD, and then like they're 2 friendly, medium, or large ships, and then you get a ship that's in distance 5 of both of them because like somehow someone wanders into the double arc, and not like the double arc of the ISD, like the front arc of the ISD and the front arc of the interdictor simultaneously, right? Like they just wandered their ship there, and instead of just killing it that turn, which is normally what would happen there, you're gonna first slow it down by 1 speed.
It just is like, okay, now you get to be slowed, and it's like, all right, I wasn't getting out of it anyway. It's like
the big problem with Constantine also is that when I put my fleet down and I see that you have Constantine, I just stack nav commands on all of my command dials, and Constantine now says pay 23 points to do nothing.
Yeah, and also like when it does work, like I've talked to Tim about this card, and obviously he runs obnoxious lists sometimes, and
some jank
he
shit,
says like
for sure.
When it does work, it's just not fun for the other player.
You just feel like an asshole.
You just feel like an asshole.
Yeah,
because you just get to park all their ships, and then it's like it's just a feels bad card. It is too restrictive for list building. And like, if you look at Admiral Constantine, and you have also been aware of the Grand Admiral Mahdi, and don't take Mahdi over Constantine.
Why'd you call him Grand Admiral? First of all, Mahdi's only a Grand Admiral in your heart, dude. It's not. Dude. He's just a regular admiral. But first of all, Mahdi, like, speaking of fun commanders, Mahdi is a fucking fun commander, right? He's like
so good.
I've got some thick cheeks on these ISDs. You'll never kill them. Hilarious, right? Like, yeah, I know you did 11 damage. You still need to do 3 more damage, and you're like, oh, how? But how?
You're missing the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
Is you put Mahdi in your list. He's a very cheap commander, one of the cheaper ones. You run ISDs with him. You get to turn 5. Your opponent's been asking you the entire game how many more damage cards on that ISD.
Because they can't calculate that high.
You've got 6 damage, man. They do another shot. They're like, yes, I got him. I did the 11 damage. And then you're like, yeah, but I've got Mahdi. You need to do 3 more damage. And then you just get to see their soul drop to the floor.
Right, because by turn 5, these ISDs have torn through an entire fleet. And is it too cheesy to put RBDs on ISDs with Mahdi?
I mean, I don't know who would play with you. You probably get to play that list once.
It's like I got 17 effective health points on my ISDs. They're basically super Star Destroyers at this point.
And
they're
like if
not
you're
dying.
banking in engineering commands like after turn 3, it's like, okay, now you have to do an incredible amount of damage.
Yeah.
It's just hilarious. And you're gonna tell me you're not gonna pay that 1 point to have just a more fun game than Admiral Constantine? It's like, no, you're not gonna do that.
Yeah.
You're just an asshole if you run Constantine, like trying to get him to work and just you're repositioning all your ships so that you can get the reduce their speed by 1. Okay, that's great, dude.
God help us if they reduce Darth Vader's point cost. It doesn't need to be any cheaper.
Darth Vader, yeah, I don't know. If we're talking about Vader now, I don't know.
I would love to see a small change in the price on Mothma, like to something in the mid-20s.
The problem with Mothma is she wants to be run on like small ships, like a lot of them, but she's like too expensive.
Right. So like if she was like 24 or 26, like then I'm like, okay, like that's like a more like the Empire just has a bunch of commanders that are like 20, 22, 24, 23, 26, 25. And like the Rebels are just like, apart from Dodonna and now Krista, right, who's 20, it's like 30, 30, 30, 30.
Yeah, see, that's the problem with all the Rebel commanders, is Dodonna and Krista.
Yeah. They're too good for too few points. Yeah.
They are really way too good. Krista should be more expensive. She should be 25 points.
Oh, fuck you.
20, like, she should be 20 points if her card only said after you deploy, you gain 1 non-scatter defense token. That's worth 20 points.
The thing with Krista is she only affects that one ship, though. She's basically an officer card, which takes away your ability to have a commander for the rest of your fleet.
See, no.
Like compared to I don't think Dodonna is undercosted, but he says every time an enemy ship is dealt a face-up damage card. That's not when you deal damage. That is like, I ran over an obstacle. You know?
I know, that's incredibly
you get to take a look at 4 cards
that.
And pick the most hateful shit you can find in those 4 cards every fucking time. Like, that's 20 points. If that's the standard, if that's the baseline, Krista's fine. It's Mothma that's overpriced.
Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that Dodonna is overcosted. I'm saying that all the other Rebel commanders are worse because Dodonna and Krista exist at their current cost.
Well, they're worse because they're too expensive. Like I think Sato's fine. I think Radis is fine. I actually think Akbar's fine.
I think Radis is fine because he got changed, so he has a higher distance that you can hyperspace in.
Right, yeah, he's fine. Maydeen, I think, could be cheaper. Kraken could be cheaper. Mothma could be cheaper. Riken could burn in hell because he's insane. But yeah, there's like 3 Rebel commanders that I think like Maydeen and Kraken. Like Kraken's
I've never seen someone run Kraken. Like what the fuck?
People fly Kraken. It's good against like MSU, right? Like wait, while a friendly ship is defending, if your ship is at speed 3 or higher, then the attack is obstructed. So it's like you want to run a bunch of small, fast ships, and the enemy loses dice. But the meta right now is
if you're taking Kraken, just spend the 4 points and get Mothma. It's better. You know?
I kind of agree with you, but yeah, Kraken just forces down your throat this going super fast thing, which isn't always really what you want to do, and Nav is so important that he shouldn't be so expensive.
Okay, so let's go down the list of Rebel commanders, because we're almost at the end of the Rebels before we get back to start talking about the Empire. Is Akbar too expensive? Or is he... No. He's perfect right where he's, right?
Yeah, he's great.
I would honestly make him 40 points.
No, get away from you. There's no command does 40 points, leave the game. Unplug, uninstall. Radis is fine. Sato is fine.
Garm needs text changes, and then I think he's good.
Kraken needs to be cheaper or better. He's okay, I guess.
Kraken is just bad.
Dodonna is fine. Maydeen is a little too expensive, like compared to a 30 point.
What would you put him at? Like 28, 25?
So like, is there an Imperial commander? There is. Okay, compare him to Ozzel, right? While a friendly ship resolves a nav command, it may change its speed by an additional 1, right? Medine, when a friendly
No.
ship...
We don't compare Medine with Ozzel. We compare Medine with Gergerod.
No.
No.
Fine, we can, but the point is valid either way. Medine is when a friendly ship resolves a nav command, if it spent a nav dial, it may increase its yaw, or if it spent a token, it can change its speed or increase its yaw by 1, right? So Medine's adding yaw. I see what you're saying, where Ozzel's adding speed, and Medine's adding yaw, and Gergerod is adding yaw, but Gergerod has this negative cost of doing damage to your own ship, whereas Ozzel does there's no negative to it. It's just when you nav, you get bonus. Medine is when you nav, you get bonus. I guess this is because FFG considers yaw changes worth 50% better than speed changes, but I do not.
Well, also, when you're resolving Medine, you already have that effect. So, you already have speed change.
But not extra yaw, or not extra speed change. This guy has extra speed change on Ozzel.
Yeah, Ozzel I don't think is very good, though.
Well, Ozzel's only 20 points and Medine is 30, so what does that tell you?
Probably Medine needs to be changed a little bit.
He needs to be cheaper, goddammit. Riken is fine. I mean, he's not fine, but he doesn't need to be cheaper. Krista is plenty cheap. Leia, we already know, is going down to 28, which I still think is, like, borderline. Mothma needs to be cheaper.
Leia would be better if you actually got a command token.
As opposed to as if it spent a command token?
Exactly. Like, why? Why can't I have command tokens?
Well, Leia's going on 1 command and 2 command ships anyway, so it doesn't really, like... maybe you want to keep 1 or something? No. I don't know.
I don't think she's going to be worth anything.
I think she's going to be... I think people are going to fly her. I think I might fly her at 28 points and see what happens, but Mothma, like, could be really, really cool with, like, an evade token fleet. She's just, like, doubling the price of whatever ship you put it on, so it makes it kind of, like a yikes to fly her, right? Like, a commander that expensive wants to be on, like, a 70 or 80 point ship at least, so it feels more safe, and, like, you can't do that with her. Now, she's so defensive that the trick is, like, if you undercost her, then suddenly, like, there's god fleets of CR90s and MC30s that cannot be killed, and, like, I get that also, but yeah, it would be cool if she was cheaper, because
what would be a good price for her? Like 28, 26? 26?
26, yeah.
I was thinking that too. Okay, so back to the Empire.
Jesus. Well, we've done Constantine, we've done Mahdi, we've done Ozzel, right?
I'm just looking at Admiral Piet, and I'm like, I don't know what you're for, man.
When a friendly ship spends only a command token, you can exhaust. If you do, the ship resolves the command as if it had spent a dial of the same type instead. So, like, there is some interesting ideas behind Piet. Like, maybe I bank a squadron command token on Quasar to later activate it and something else, and, like, get the dial. Like, you're saving the dial for later, right? Like, it's kind of like a flexible Thrawn, where Thrawn you have to set all the dials at the beginning. With Piet on turn 1, like, you could bank the tokens that you think you might want to use as commands later. Piet is
I feel like Piet needs to have additional text that says, if you're running an SSD and no other ships that can attack, you can use this card. It's not for any other fleets.
The problem with Piet, I think, is that his effectiveness goes down the better you are at playing the game. Because if you're good at placing your command dials and knowing what turn you're going to need which dial, he becomes less of like a ooh,
Well, he's like a double dial commander like Thrawn, so he, like, increases the effectiveness. But he is the reverse of Thrawn, where Thrawn's effectiveness increases the more ships you have. Piet's effectiveness goes down the more ships you have. So read Admiral Piet as, if you're running an SSD and that's the only ship that will do damage, you can run this card in your list. Any other lists don't take Admiral Piet.
I think he's fine. Like, what is he supposed to be? Cheaper than 20 points? Like, no commander is cheaper than 20 points.
No, I'm just looking at him and I'm like, I don't know what to think about you. Like, run him on your SSD and get more
I think
upgrades.
very little about him. He's very boring.
He
Screed, I
is
think,
a very
is
boring card.
Screed is fine at 26. Sloan, I think, is fine.
Yeah, Sloan is fine.
Vader cannot go down in price.
Vader absolutely cannot go down. If he goes down, there's like, I would hesitate to reduce his points by 2. Like, reducing Vader by 2 points is like a disaster.
Do you think Palpatine is too expensive?
Yeah, he's too expensive.
No one ever plays him, I feel like.
He's just not good.
Is it just because people avoid using the defense token that you flip over that turn?
Yeah, it's just like, it gives the opponent too much like control. It's like, okay, I can't use my brace. All right, you have one ship that attacks. Okay. I'll just redo
Now
it.
that they added Salvo, I guess he gets 5 defense tokens on him, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, that's not very good.
I feel like it could be so good. It's such an interesting design, right? It's like, I've predicted what you're going to do and you will be punished for it. It's very Palpatine.
Yeah.
Do you think like 30 points? 32 points?
30. Yeah, because the opponent also gets to spend it.
They get the benefit of it still, right?
Yeah, like if they... Yeah, they still get to spend it. That's why it's not good.
He's a commander who exists in a game that moves at a slower pace than Armada currently
Actually,
moves at.
like, if I was changing Palpatine, I would keep his point cost the same and say, once per round, you can, while you're attacking, you can discard a brace token, like I always says at the start. So at the start of the phase, or the ship phase, discard one of the tokens. Then, while you're attacking, you can select a defense token that has been used and cancel that effect.
Once per round?
Once per round. So instead of making them discard it, you're just canceling the effect of one usage.
So you're making him basically 1 accuracy die per round.
Yeah. 1 extra 1. For whatever command or defense token you used.
Why don't you just simplify the text incredibly and say, once per round, you may add 1 accuracy die to your attack pool.
I mean, that's a lot less complicated, but then you can't... There's not the placing each defense token and only being able to do that once.
It becomes flavor-wise a lot different, but you get the benefit of saying, no, you can't do this thing now. I think like flavor-wise, there's like the whole Emperor Palpatine prediction thing going into it that's cool.
Yeah.
But
the problem is that there's no... You could run this and it just not work the whole game. You discard the token, and then they just don't care.
they just don't spend.
They're like, okay, you targeted my redirect, I'll brace, and there you go.
Yeah, really, there's only one turn that matters, which is the turn that you discard your brace. Like that's the turn that really matters, right? If you need to do maximum damage that turn.
Maybe he would be good if you have a ship that can generate a lot of accuracies, like an H9 kind of list. You accuracy, but see, again, it's like you have to do it at the start of the ship phase. He has weird timing that I don't think is very good. I've never seen someone
Play him?
even make a list with him, let alone play it.
Same. General Ramadi. This is the obstruction guy. He's the reverse obstruction guy, right? He's like, when shit's obstructed, add a die. Boom. Crazy.
I think he's a little too cheap.
I've never seen anyone fly this guy. Like, wow, look at this crazy Ramadi list. But I feel like he could be cool. I just think that...
Spoiler alert, he's in the updated Red October list.
Right, yeah. But, like, is that just because you were obstructed last round and you didn't want to be? Like,
no, it's
there's
because
so many shots, like, it's ingrained in every player to, like, not be obstructed when they're shooting, you know? Like, and I guess you can build a list and, like, intentionally obstruct your attacks, like, but the other player has the agency to stack the obstacles in the corner and deploy away from them.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's...
So,
I don't
he's
know.
fine being cheap. He's fine.
He seems really cheap, though. Like, is he Ozzel cheap if he can add red dice? I don't know.
Red dice suck.
General Tag is... I don't like this card. I think it's awful.
Well, we talked about him a little bit before. At the start of the 3rd and 5th round, each friendly ship may recover one of his discarded defense tokens. He's fine, I guess.
I would reduce his... I would make him 20 points.
I think he could. I think he's fine. He's just boring. Like there's no specific list that like I'm like inspired to play because I have tag. Just like, oh, your list that's pretty tanky. Like let's make it more tanky. Something I found though is like eventually recovering more and more defense tokens does not actually translate to that many more effective hit points. Like because
especially
you're gonna
in the 5th round.
Yeah, even if I brace every single shot, my ship will eventually die.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yes, he adds effective hit points to your ship, but they're not immortal. Like,
I was trying to come up with a cool list that used General Tag, but General Tag and Salvo. So it comes in speeding at speed 3 with ISDs, and just discard them, just burn them out. Burn all the salvos.
Before turn 3.
But the problem is, like, at the start of the 3rd round is normally when the shooting starts.
Yep.
So, like, how do you get your ships there sooner?
Fleet ambush, LOL.
You would have to be, like, 2nd player.
Fleet ambush, dude.
Fleet ambush, surprise attack shit.
No, you need to be 1st player. They need to have brought fleet ambush, and then you need to pick it. Then you happen to have tag with 2 ISDs, one of them's Avenger, and you're, like, deploying...
That's so hard.
And you just start, like, pounding away at them, and then turn 3, you're like, yeah, I need my salvo back. This is not good. Because even then, you're taking the brace back, right? Like, you're taking the brace back. It's fucking...
I don't know. I like the idea of running tag with salvo.
Thrawn, I think, is fine where he is. They've already said they're not changing the price.
Yeah, they're not changing him. I don't think
Tarkin, we've already said, needs to be a completely different card. And that brings us to Jerry, who is everyone's favorite commander.
The Grand Admiral Moff Jerjerrod.
Supreme Leader Moff Jerjerrod.
This is another one of those commander cards that is just so amazingly good that his value cannot be calculated.
If he was a rebel commander, he would be 38 points.
Yeah.
Oh, shit, dude. During a friendly, ship's determined course step and may suffer 1 damage to change the first yaw value of its current speed to 2 until the end of its...
Honestly, if you're listening to this podcast and you don't know what Moff Jerjerrod does, you probably haven't ever played a game.
No, that's not true. There's lots of rebel players out there who haven't seen anyone like do a pop a wheelie on an ISD.
No. Or the dirty 3-speed ISD inside turn.
Yeah. Yeah, Jerry basically lets you double click on turn 1. Going 3-speed at an ISD allows you to put it on the inside, cut a corner really hard, and nobody expects an ISD to turn like that. And you're suddenly just like yeeted yourself into someone's face and just nuclear option them next turn.
Yeah, because they're like, oh, what speed are you going? You're like, speed 3. But no, Jerjerrod says you can do like a 0.5 speed pivot on your ISD.
Yeah. He's silly good.
Incredible.
He's silly good. And it costs you like 1 engineering command by the end of the game worth of shields, you know?
An engineering token. Bank an engineering token. There you go, you get your shield back. Honestly, when I first played him, I was like, he must mean a damage card.
Yeah.
Because it's that good.
Yeah, but it's not.
No,
it's just a shield.
Shields. Incredible.
ISDs have lots of shields, so they're not that mad about it.
And honestly, like, the problem with Piet is also because Jerjerrod exists. Because, like, if I'm taking an SSD, I'm taking Jerjerrod and not Piet. Like, obviously. So, I don't know.
Well, you're not taking Piet for any reason, so.
I mean, I would take him on an SSD, but I would only take him if Jerjerrod, like, wasn't a card.
If Jerjerrod was a rebel commander, it would be 36 points.
You just said that, and you said 38. How did he go down by 2 points already?
Oh, did I say that already?
You said that exact phrase, but you said 38 points. What changed?
I just didn't want to pick the same number I already picked. I wanted a new number.
You said the same thing you already said. So really not a lot of commander changes that I think. I think a couple of them need text changes and or like different rules. But not a lot of points changes for the ones that already exist. Which I feel like is how a lot of the commanders will pan out.
I agree.
But yeah, Tarkin for sure is going to get some kind of change. He's just god awful, unusable as he is right now. Okay, what are we flying next? We're filming some games this Saturday. What are we flying? What are you taking?
Plea of Justice might come back for one more run.
Yeah.
But part of me also wants to fly a Dodonalist. Crit the
Dodonna's
shit
really
out
good.
of you. Crit, you know?
Yeah.
I was inspired by the draw of the MC30 last game to say, well, what if I could pick that shit every time? You know? So I'm thinking about a couple of things.
Yeah.
What about you?
I am taking an SSD. I'm bringing an SSD next time.
Bro, don't fly that thing.
I'm gonna. It's gonna smash your face.
It's not gonna shoot.
It's gonna shoot, man. See, here's the thing. I've got an SSD with 4 deployments and first player. Probably.
Is it like 360 or something ridiculous?
It's not that ridiculous. I don't bid more than 16 points.
Fair.
We should probably have an episode where we're talking about the bid.
I don't bid. I pack as many points on my list as possible, take second player, and rack up 150 points of objectives.
What if you bid for second? I think that's an option.
Nobody bids for second. I don't think anybody bids for second, so I don't have to. Like if somebody else was like, oh, I'm 399 and I want second player, like it's the first time that happens to me, I'll be like, damn, maybe I'll consider it. But most of the time people bid for first just because they think the advantage is so strong, and it is so strong. But I like having to play with what I feel like is that disadvantage of being second and trying to make up for it with the way that I'm playing or the objective or how I'm flying around the board. You know,
I just feel like you are more comfortable playing the game where you feel like you have more control over the flow of the game because of your objective choices.
Right, exactly. That's true.
Yeah.
Whereas first player has less control over the flow of the game and just wants to come in there and just start slugging. Makes me feel uncomfortable.
That's how I like to play the game. I just want to get in there and smash.
Well, that's all I've got for today.
Yeah, that's it. There's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks
and
again to Bill for that suggestion. If you have any other suggestions or topics you want to hear on the podcast, just go to the YouTube channel and leave a comment in one of the episodes. We'll see it.
Yep. All right. Well, have a good one.